Hey everybody, welcome to the Dad Challenge podcast. My name is Josh, and before we get started into episode 2 of Why I'm an Ex-Pastor, it's really cool. I teamed up with NordVPN, and this is a sponsored message, and that's really cool that we've gotten to that place in this channel. I'm really excited about it. So Nord reached out, and it's funny because I've been using Nord for years. And I'm saying this from experience, that Nord is one of the best VPNs I've ever used. And so I've been a cord cutter for years and years and years. I'm an agent of justice, and I cut off from the big cable companies a long time ago. And I ingest everything I need to watch through all my streaming services and the way I browse. And so having a VPN, if you didn't know, is a very safe way to protect your browsing from the government and prying eyes and all that kind of stuff. You don't want people seeing what you're doing. It's safe, and it basically what it does is it puts you in a different area of the world or country, whichever you choose, and it pings your IP from there. It's a really great piece of technology that allows us to kind of stay private on the internet, and that's why I like it, and that's why I've been using it for years. So it's kind of cool that we teamed up. So head over to nordvpn.com/thedadchallenge. Here's the deal: if you sign up before the end of July, you get 3 years at $349 a month. Plus, you get an extra month free if you use the code TheDadChallenge. Don't forget to use that because NordVPN needs that code to know that I'm talking to you and sent you there. But you need a VPN. If you're on the internet and you spend a lot of time, especially working from home with COVID and all that stuff, a VPN is very important, okay? So go get yourself NordVPN right now at nordvpn.com/thedadchallenge. That's all I'm asking you to do. Otherwise, let's get right into episode 2 of The Burnt Out Pastor on the Dad Challenge podcast. It's going to be crazy. Thanks for coming back to episode 2. I told you guys I was worried about talking about this, but after today, after reading a lot of your comments and the 2 live views and asking some questions from you, I'm confident that this is a topic that people really want to talk about. And from when I asked questions today, there was a lot of people that said, I don't go to church at all. And I'm just interested in hearing this perspective and this view. And there's a lot of people who do go to church that aren't happy. Very few, or if any, I don't think I saw any, like, I'm happy where I am. And I'm sure there are some people who are like that. So this is definitely a narrative, a conversation that needs to be happening in social media today, because I Googled it and not a lot of people talk about it. Very few pastors talk about this because of the ramifications of talking about this. You'll basically be blackballed from ministry because it's a very tight-knit community, even though it's huge. All they have to do is look up the video and they see you're doing a video about how you're an ex-pastor. They're not going to hire you, right? Or if you're complaining about the church or whatever, they just don't want that drama. And so today, I know I left you guys on a cliffhanger yesterday, but today I want to talk to you about kind of what I did once I got hired at this church. And tell you about my days and tell you about the burnout and how that kind of escalated and how that turned out to be where it was. And basically my story is a lot of pastors' stories and a lot of people in ministry in general. This is their story. Because churches have this tendency to burn people out, and it's just kind of like, that's the way it is. I'm going to Google right now, what is the average tenure of a youth pastor? So according to Indeed.com, which is a job hunting place, the average tenure of a youth pastor is 2 to 4 years. Wow. Yep, that makes sense. According to Ministry Jobs, the average lifetime of a worship pastor is also 2 to 3 years. So it's like, we're talking 18 to 24 months. That seems crazy because most of these people pack up their families and move them to these places. And you're uprooting your families and everything else to do all this. And for the average is 2 years for a career. So this is why they don't talk about it. They don't want to, they're scared to, because this is their life. And they just keep hopping around. It's like the military. Ministry is really hard. Okay. So we left you off with, I got fired. And now we're going to go into what I did first. Because I want to kind of lay it out for you so that you can see what I actually did. And because it's going to actually lead to why I was fired. And I'm going to actually try to show you that there was absolutely no reason I should have been fired. And I'm going to tell you why I think I was fired. And I'm going to tell you some crazy things that I think happened and that I have some proof of. So let's talk about it. Okay, so I was hired at this church, and I told you it took me 6 months to get this position. So I had to do all those disc profiles. I had to audition, I think, twice or 3 times. I had to come meet with 2 to 3 different sets of teams. It was insane. These types of churches are very careful with who they hire for good reason, right? You want it to be someone who's going to come in and uphold your values and your vision, and or execute something. So in my case, I was hired to modernize the music. I was hired to bring in the technology and the Sunday morning experience to elevate it to a different level, to make it more professional and to do all the stuff. And the guy who I preceded was a really great dude who stayed on staff as a different pastor. He was just burnt out from that position and he decided he didn't want to do that anymore. And so, but he was a great mentor too. And I say that I came in to modernize everything just because he was just like, he was a little bit dated in what he did, very talented, but just not up for the new level, right? So he was a great dude, just not up for it. And so I came in and I did exactly that. And so the first thing I did was I implemented tracks and I implemented in-ears and clicks and things like that. When you play drums and to music, everybody has a metronome in their ear. It makes you sound better. It makes you tighter. For me, excellence was everything. So I mean, and I think a lot of these churches, these mega churches, excellence trumps absolutely everything. And I mean, Jesus has a place there, but excellence is everything. If you're not perfect, then people aren't going to come to your church, and they're going to be like, and people are hyper judging you when you come to church. If you're a musician or something like that, and you're at a church, like, and I do this, and I'm so guilty of this. I'm just sitting there analyzing the service. I don't get to enjoy church services anymore. If you're a person in that industry, of any kind of industry, and you go to an industry event or a place that you do that thing, you don't get to enjoy it. You are always analyzing. So if I'm going to another church, I'm stealing their ideas. I love that sign they have in their cafe, and I love this, and I love the way that this does this, and that's what other churches do. They go around to other churches and they steal everybody's ideas, and it's great. Nobody cares. It's just what we do, because that community is very, very welcoming in the sense that church is very like, yeah, come. We would have people, smaller churches, come to our church to see how we did it. We would feed them lunch, and we would walk them through our whole processes, and we would give them all the secret sauce, right? We would want them to have it, and that's what North Point does at Drive. Well, some of the secret sauce, but they make you pay for the rest. It's very expensive. And so that's what a lot of churches do. So you just can't analyze. So when I'm saying that to say that if you're not perfect, especially when these other people are around, it's just this big giant competition. It's the craziest thing ever. It's a big giant who does it better in this industry, in the church world. And if you're from the church world, you know exactly what I'm talking about. If you've ever been to a worship conference, the amount of dumb hats that you see, like these style of hats, you see, and scarves. It's like the middle of summer in Atlanta. Why are you wearing a scarf and skinny jeans and the weird clothes? If you don't dress the way that you're supposed to dress, it's kind of like you're not cool. It's so weird. This culture that's supposed to be super accepting, and so it's just, even the subculture of ministry worship is like, if you don't look the part or whatever, you're just not cool. There are so many touring bands like Hillsong, Elevation, Bethel that tour for a living and make, like, I'm talking hundreds of thousands of dollars these artists make. Just mind-blowing amounts of money. And like, they're inaccessible. Like, you don't get to, they're rock stars. You don't get to just go hang out with them, talk to them, ask. Yeah, I went to a conference in Nashville right before I left the church, right before I got fired. And I basically just wanted to go to this conference, and I wanted to just learn some stuff, and I wanted to ask questions. And it was literally the whole 2 days was the next band showing off their next new songs, what's coming up, so that we throw it into our ears, that we would use it, because worship is worth millions upon hundreds of millions of dollars. Every Sunday, Chris Tomlin has a bath in cash because we were doing his music. And so anyway, this conference was basically them just doing their songs, and they would sit up on the stage and they would be like, here's an interview. How do you do this at your church? And they'd be like, well, we just hire everybody. And when, we just go to a multi-million-dollar studio and we have songwriters, and like, none of us in the room can do this. We don't have budgets. We can't, none of it's achievable. And yet we all have this pipe dream. We go to these conferences and we see these things, and it's inaccessible. This whole world is just, it's the same as the rest of the world. It's just not, it's inauthentic is what I'm saying. And it's full of rock stars, and it's full of people that just want to make money. And I'm going to sit here, I'm going to tell you right now, the church is a business, and it is a very lucrative business, okay? Nonprofit, they hardly pay taxes, if at all, especially in Canada. You don't pay any property taxes, nothing. You get like, the property, I always had 30 acres, just prime real estate, don't pay any tax. Okay, they crowdfund for their buildings. Basically, they ask people to tithe extra on top of what they're already tithing. They pay $12-15 million for these buildings with sound systems and all this stuff. They put millions of dollars of tech and playgrounds and like crazy kids wings and all these things that bring people that are already Christians to their doors. It's just like, whoever's doing it better, that's where everybody goes, and it's just a big competition to bring people in who are already Christians so they can tithe and pay you money. That's it. It's a business. That's how the sausage is made, folks. The conversations we have behind the scenes, I'm getting ahead of myself. I'm sorry. So anyway, I was always immersed in this culture. So I came in and I was that guy. I'm like, everybody wanted to be me because I was bringing that to this region. And I'm saying that in a not cocky way, I promise. I'm really not. I just was always on the upper, I was always studying the newest way of doing things, and I was always implementing it and throwing it out. I was never scared to take risks, and I was just doing it. So people liked especially in the industry locally, people would come, how are you doing that? Can you teach me how to do the tech? And I absolutely would pour into them as much as I could. And it felt good. And all these pastors and worship leaders that we all follow, they all have big heads about that stuff too. They're like, I'm the best. I know I'm the best. And I wear a scarf and this stupid hat, and come check out how we do it. But don't ask me any questions because I'm too busy for you. That's basically what it is. Now, North Point, though, is not that way. I know some people are hating on North Point. They're not. You could go to North Point. I could call them tomorrow and say, can I come out this Sunday? Can you walk me through? They would be like, come out. They would feed you. Do you need anything? They carry you around in a chair. They're amazing. So there are churches that do it right. But I'm just saying, this is how this works, okay? You build something and people want a part of it because what are you doing that's successful? How are you getting butts and chairs? And this is how most churches get butts and chairs. The lead pastor, okay, is the main driver for most churches. The way that he speaks and the way he delivers his message, like Andy Stanley, look at the guy from Elevation, which is Stephen Furtick. You've got like all these, just Craig Rochelle from Life Church and all these big mega churches. They're all there because of their pastors. The music is also a huge part of it, right? So it's generally, at the church I was at, they did a yearly, you fill out this little card. And people hate doing it, but we make them fill it out. You have 20 minutes, we're going to play some tunes, you fill this card out, and you just basically tell the church the truth about everything. They want your data. Churches thrive on data. Why aren't people coming? Why are they leaving? Why are they staying? Blah, 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 and we want to make that better. It's all marketing. It's all about how do we keep you here? How do we keep you tithing? It's the truth of it. Because without tithing, churches can't survive. And so it's a necessary thing. And I'm not saying it's a bad thing. Tithing is important. We talked about that in the live stream today. Tithing is important. And we're going to get to that in another video, but it doesn't necessarily you don't have to tithe to a mega church. You can tithe to the homeless guy in the corner who needs a new pair of shoes. That's tithing. You can tithe your time to a pregnancy center. That's tithing. You can rake leaves for an old lady. Time is tithing. And churches are always telling you, oh, we need 10%. You're just not how this works. Okay, so anyway, churches are a big marketing. They have social media, they have video, they have production to get your butt in the seat so that you stay and you pay. If you don't think that's the way it is, you're wrong. And I lived it, so I'm right. Sorry. Anyway, so I get to this church and I start implementing all these processes right away. And the music starts elevating. The team starts growing. People want to be a part of it. And some people step down because they're like, I don't want to be a part of this. Because people like the way, another thing about churches is people like the way it's always been. And they hate change. And so you get the anonymous letters that get slipped under your door, like, I hate you, burn in hell, your music sucks ass, and they never write their name on it, or they write this long letter like, can you turn it down? And we would offer earplugs, and it's this whole world of like worship wars is what they call it. So people hate you, some people love you, and you're never going to please everybody. But my main job was to modernize the music and elevate the Sunday morning experience to a new level. And it's what I did. I'm going to walk you through like my day-to-day. My first month there, I probably worked 70 hours a week just because I was just trying to make an impression, get good, find the systems, and get in there and start rolling. By Christmas, which is, okay, anybody in ministry watching me, look at my eyes. Look at my eyes. I feel for you. Christmas, when you are a minister or in ministry, does not exist for you. It is the worst time of year. It's the most busiest time of year for you. You don't have a minute to breathe. You don't have a minute to take a dump. You don't have a minute for anything. Okay? Christmas in ministry takes the joy away from Christmas. And that's the saddest part about ministry because it should be the most important time with your family. But churches thrive at Christmas because that offering plate is calling. And those numbers that come to your church. So if my church has 2,200 on an average Sunday, Christmas, 6,000 over 5 services. And you're performing at a huge level. And I would put these enormous Christmas showcases together with huge music numbers and everything else just to get people in the doors. And it was not a gospel message. We light a candle at the end, everybody goes home, feels good. I love those services, don't get me wrong. But we were burnt out after those. I remember leading up to Christmas, I think the first year, I did 122 hours in 11 days. Think about that for a second. I didn't even see my family until Christmas Day. It was crazy. Okay. And so the day-to-day of a worship pastor, specifically what I did was like a lot of emails. You're at the meetings. Oh my gosh, the meetings. This could have been an email, but we had a 2-hour meeting. Every Monday or Tuesday it was that we'd get together and reassess Sunday. What did we do wrong? What did we do right? What are we doing next week? And we would plan 8 weeks out and we would do this crazy planning, all this stuff. And it just never ended. It was always 2 hours. Just same meeting every week, 2 hours. And the lead pastor would micromanage the music and everything else. I was supposed to be the pastor that picked everything, but it was always to the leader. It always came to this leader of my church, the lead pastor that micromanaged everybody. It always came across like he'd always tell everybody it's a team effort. It's a team effort. It's a team effort. We're a team effort here. And, we do everything as a team and all this stuff. It wasn't a team effort. We all just went along with it because he's our boss. And that's another thing. They weren't bosses. They were our coaches. It was so dumb how they ran this thing. It was just a big farce. It was and most churches do this. They have this different structure and they're like, oh, there's no bosses here. We just all chill. There's a boss. I promise you. Okay. There's always, and it's usually the lead pastor who runs the show from the top. That's just the way this goes. And that's okay. As a pastor and as someone who works under somebody, you have to submit to your lead pastor. That's biblical. And there's nothing wrong with that. But I just didn't like the fact that he'd come out and tell the world that this is a team effort and blah, 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 when it was just a him effort. And he would just tell us what to do. And so we would do it. But and I'll tell you a story about that. I told him one day that I was honest with him. I'm like, look, you always tell people this is a team effort, but I just want this is not a team effort. You tell us what to do and we do it. And there's nothing wrong with that. I just wanted to know, that was kind of bothering me. And he did not like that at all. And we basically got along. There was no animosity. There was no arguing. There was no drama. Everybody liked everybody on our staff. So I thought I could be honest with him and tell him, hey, I just want to let you know that I get a little bit frustrated sometimes because you tell everybody it's a team effort, but you are the dude that plans all this. Just want you to know that you're telling people a lie in a nice way. I didn't say it that way. Anyway, so going through, I would do emails, every Tuesday we'd have these big giant meetings. Then I'd have my rehearsals. So I'd be rehearsing during the day and then I rehearse at night. We go till I have 3 stages at one point. So every Sunday we had 3 stages with 3 bands and I had to be at all the rehearsals and showing everybody and creating all the stuff and creating teams. I had 111 people on my team at one point. I was managing 9 musical bands and 111 people for this. And then every 3 months, I would do a new stage design on 3 stages. And I had a great, amazing team that would help me with that, but I would always be there with the snacks and a hammer, willing to help out at all times. And so I was basically, what it came down to was I was doing the job. If I was at a bigger church with a bigger budget, okay, I would do the job of about 5 people. And people in ministry know exactly what I'm talking about. You tend to do the job and wear the hat of 3 to 4 or 5 people at smaller churches that don't have big budgets. Bigger churches, like the job I was being looked at in Florida, this massive 8,000-seater mega church. You don't do anything but the music and you have assistants to do everything. And I'm like, that sounded kind of low-key awesome, because I would have loved that, because that would have been a beautiful break from doing everything myself. And so here's what happens. First 6 months, I'm happy, I'm going, I'm gung-ho. But actually, here's what happened. The first week I started, the executive pastor brings me to his office. By the way, an executive pastor is just a person who's just number 2, generally isn't as talented as number 1 or talented at all. And they just kind of do the day-to-day grunt work and they tell people no. That's their job. So there's some good executive pastors, but there are some terrible ones like mine. And so the tech director, who's the guy who takes care of all the tech, sound, all the lighting and all this stuff, quits. He's done. I should have saw a red flag. I was like, stars in my eyes, mega church, right? I was like, no. So he brings me to his office. He's like, so this guy just quit and now that's on you. So I took 2 full-time jobs and wore the other hats I was wearing right when I started. But what am I going to say? Am I going to say no? Of course I'm not. I have to keep this job. I just started. This is my dream job, so I got to do it. So I was doing the job of a tech director and a worship leader. And if anybody knows the job of that stuff, that's like rolling out sound systems, setting up sound equipment, changing batteries, programming things, troubleshooting soundboards, doing pro presenter, lyrics, and everything. I was doing literally everything. Not a chance to breathe at all. And that's just no problem. And then we hired a tech director, which was great, like a communications guy. And then we split the role, and it was great, and kind of, I was still doing a full-time job and a half, though, until we could hire somebody. Anyway, so that just kept going and going and going. And over time, you get used to it. But then eventually something starts to happen. And you're like, I'm getting a little bit tired. Not tired of this, I'm sick of it. But I'm literally, physically, this is starting to tire me. Because not only am I being micromanaged to the nth degree, but I'm also getting tired. I literally I see my family twice a week. Sometimes I wake up in the morning, go to church. I don't see my family. They're in bed by the time I get home. I'm there 3 nights a week doing rehearsals and everything else. Christmas, I don't see my family. Easter, don't even talk to me about Easter. We don't see our kids at Easter either. Here's the thing about churches too, though. All of them will say that family first. God, family, church. right? And they're like family first, and they always talk about these things, and they'll say all these things, but do a completely different thing. They don't hold pastors accountable who are not spending time with their families. Do you know how many pastors go get a divorce or cheat on their wives because they're literally living at the churches and they're around other people all the time, like assistants and everything? Moral failing happens more than you'll know, more than anybody will care to admit, because pastors are removed from it all, okay? I didn't have any moral failings. That's not why I got fired, so don't be thinking that. My wife is my everything, and my kids, it's just not worth it. And I never had thought about that. But anyway, that's just a big thing. When you're not home a lot, you live a different life. And so churches just don't give a flying rat's behind. Okay, most don't, because otherwise we would keep our pastors longer, right? If you are happy at your job, why would you leave? The turnover rate's because churches burn the shit out of pastors. They literally burn them out like shooting stars. And so I was getting to that point. And so I went to my two leaders, my executive pastor and my lead pastor. I said, guys, I am burning out. I need some help, which means I needed a pastor at the other church plant that we created. So I was not only running 2 stages at the main campus, but I was running the other church too, the worship over there and the tech and everything. Just crazy how much I was doing. And some people will say, nah, you weren't. I was literally there at the new place with a hammer and nails and busting down walls and breaking stuff and volunteering my time too. Also, let's not even forget the forced volunteering that pastors and people in ministry are supposed to do. And it's usually the church says you have to volunteer at this church. So a church will tell their pastors and ministry professionals and leaders that they have to volunteer their time, either in the community or whatever. You have to do 10 hours of volunteer time. It's part of your salary, whatever, which is totally illegal, by the way. You can't do that. But most churches will make you do those volunteer times at the church. And it's just a cheap, free way of getting overtime hours for free. And they'll say, no, this is your volunteer time. Because the amount of overtime hours I worked, I did a rough estimate. That church would have owed me 675 hours of overtime if I would have, just a rough conservative estimate, by the way. Conservative. I literally was like, well, let's take it just to be safe. That was a safe estimate. It was way more than that because that's what people do. And it's basically illegal, and the church just gets away with it because it's like, here's what they say to you. This is about Jesus. You're working for Jesus. This is all for Jesus. And so you need to do this. You're going to have to suffer a little bit. You're going to have to miss out on some things for sure, but isn't it worth it for the cause of Jesus? That's what they say to you. And they guilt you and they gaslight you into these things. And pastors just don't know any better because that's your lead pastor or that's your executive pastor who resides over you, and you submit to them. And then it causes problems at home. You get in arguments because you're never there and everybody else and blah, blah, blah. And you're always comparing yourself to other pastors and everything else. It's just this crazy world of just hidden hurt and hidden shame and hidden like struggle that you don't know your pastor's dealing with. And the only pastors who really don't have to deal with that, and this is what pisses me off the most, is that executive pastor, that lead pastor. Where the hell are they in the afternoon? They're gone by 3. And me and the communications pastor and the tech director are there from morning to night, every single day of the week, doing everything. And if something goes wrong, Tuesday meeting, what went wrong? There was a lyric that was spelt wrong on the screen. And they would just like freak out about like, are you serious? I don't have any help. I have to do everything myself. Where are you? You want to help? You don't know anything about this tech. And that's another conversation about boomer pastors who have no idea how anything runs, but take all the credit for it, by the way. And don't say thank you at all. And they're just like, yeah, great. They'll say great job, everybody, because it's like, you're growing and you're doing good things, but they're taking the credit for everything. And that's okay. I'm not doing this for the credit. I never got into ministry for the credit. Okay. It wasn't just like, I'd love to be thanked. Even when people come up to me on a Sunday and that was an amazing service. I love your music, blah, blah. It makes me cringe. And that's okay. I'm happy to be, and my answer was like, thanks for coming out. Really appreciate being here. I'm glad you enjoyed it. And I just had a canned response for everybody, right? But it really cringes me out when people just like pull me over when I'm trying to walk down the aisle, go see my family. Loved it. Amazing. Hugging you, like inappropriate, like, ew, COVID. Don't. Man, I know I'm getting off on a tangent, but I'm just passionate about this. So this is what I was doing at this place. And so for 2.5 years, this place grew from about 1,700 on a Sunday to like my last Sunday, almost 2,300. That is a growth of 600, carry the 7, 600 people, okay? Like I'm not good at math, but that most churches in my region don't have 600 people in them. And so I'm not taking credit that it was just me, but I am going to say that the new hires and the new direction that they were bringing in communications pastor and a tech director and people that were kind of like ready to take on this new thing. They brought in a bunch of new people and all these new people kind of got together and the team was amazing. It was the team effort for sure, but it was growing because the lead pastor was a very gifted speaker and has always been. And then I brought in the music and the Sunday morning experience, like the production. And so those two things started growing and growing and growing. Again, it's not all me. You just have to put the denominators together to see why it's growing. Okay? So, I hate to say it, but it must have been something I was doing that was right. Okay? And a lot of people would leave, and then a lot of people would come. But even if you're growing by that much, 10, 15% a year, that is a lot of growth for a church, and especially in Canada, in a region who's very liberal. Canada is not like the U.S. when it comes to church, people. It is nothing like the U.S. People are born Christian in the U.S. You go to like youth group in Texas or whatever, and kids are raising their hand to worship and they're texting. If you're a Christian in Canada, you gotta want it, right? Being Christian in Canada ain't cool. It's not like, we're not looked upon nicely here. It's not. You have to want it. And so I go back to those letters. And so I would get some hate letters. I would get some, I'd get somebody shake my hand with a $5 bill in it. Can you do some more hymns and, get the worship wars? And I dealt with it. It's fine. I never offended me, because I understand why people want the songs that they want, and people want the hymns and they want the old way of doing things. The whole world in these boomer generation wants the way it used to be, and it's never going to be it. And I low-key understand why they want it, because nostalgia is a very powerful thing. And in their life, they had these moments back in the day when those were the songs of their generation. Those were the songs that they grew up on. And like, that was it for them, right? People would shake my hand with a $5 bill. Hey, give me another hymn next week. I was low key ready to like auction off hymn, pick your song for next week and we'll raise some money for like, Kenya. It's like doing a couple ideas and stuff like that. But any mention of raising money for anything, like doing an album or anything like that, because a lot of churches now are doing records and albums and it costs a lot of money. They'd be like, no, you can't ask people for money. You can't do crowdfunding because then it takes away from people's tithing. It was all about tithing. Anything that came up, programs and whatever, was all about money. What's it going to cost? How are we going to do this? And let me tell you about money. Here's one of the big issues that came up. So the church, instead of building a new auditorium, which is what they should have done, because they're like a meeting in a gym. Okay, and it's crazy, the echo, and it sounds like crap for this mega church meeting in a gym, like crazy. And it's the church's gym, but we had a west side wing, which was beautiful sounding, but it just didn't fit a lot of people. Was the overflow, and we were so packed that we had overflow. Instead of building a new auditorium that fits everybody, they built a $500,000 wing of overflow and a kids playground that was massive. I don't know if that playground was close to $200,000. A playground for $200,000. Think about that. The money that could have went to for other things, but I sort of get why churches do that. Bringing people in brings up more money, which means you can put it out into the world. I will always be an advocate for churches. I'm never going to say ever shut down churches. Churches definitely give, I want to say, billions to homeless and to like programs. Churches do that. There is no doubt about it, for sure. If you took away churches' tax funding and everything else, who's going to fill the shoes of what the church actually gives to communities and around the world? The government will have to, and you're going to see a massive, churches do a lot. So I'm not hating on that. Anyway, instead of building this thing, they said, well, let's go start another campus in the next part of the city. And they found this old place, this old mall, strip mall, and they rented it and they gutted it and built this new church, and it was going to cost this much money. And then it didn't. It cost like $150,000 more than it was supposed to cost. And I got upset because they froze everybody's budgets for the rest of the year, which means can't buy things like strings, like equipment that I needed, batteries, everything's frozen. You have to go through 5 channels to get something done, and it takes twice as long, 3 times as long to get anything done. Basically, I'm supposed to be able to run my department, and I couldn't run my department anymore because now they overspent money because of bad decisions. So I went to the meeting, and I wasn't angry. We had, another meeting, just meetings galore all day long. Meetings just, oh my gosh. I remember the youth pastor who's gone now, thank God, and the other pastor. They always found a way to skip out, and I was so jealous. These meetings were so boring. I wanted to gouge my eyes out with a spoon and be like, oh, I hurt myself. I have to leave. I was ready to get COVID and not go to these meetings, basically. I brought it up at a meeting. I said, can we call out one of these contractors or something, or reach out and say, why were you $150,000 over budget? Because I wasn't upset, but I was just like, look, come on, guys. What happened here? $150,000 for a $300,000 project? That's a crazy amount of money. That's half the cost of the whole thing. Overage. What happened? And I was kind of just giving the runaround, be like, oh, don't worry, we got it covered, but it just kind of fluffed it off. But what I didn't realize was that pissed them off. I was asking hard questions, because don't forget, guys, I wasn't just this low lackey little piddly pastor. I'm a lead pastor. I'm the lead worship pastor in the leadership team. That was my role. And so after I asked that question, and after I actually told that, remember I told the lead pastor that I thought that when he keeps telling people this is a team effort and it's not, things started changing. And so I have to address it. I'm not the kind of guy that comes in place and I'm looking for ways to be offended and I'm looking for ways to like shut it down. And I was not that type of person. If you ask anybody on staff there, most people, I think, I had great relationships with everybody. Everybody was friends. There was no drama. There literally was no drama. And that's what I loved about it. But then it started happening that things started shifting after I started asking hard questions. So it was about a year and a half in. And they started shifting my role. And they took out the tech director from underneath me and put under communications pastor. And then now I had to ask 3 different people to get certain things done, even though I was just as proficient as everybody else in tech world and I could have done it myself. And so things started shifting. I started noticing it. I trust my gut. You guys know I trust my gut. Okay. Something started shifting because I was asking hard questions. And so then I think there was a point where I went to them and I said, guys, I need a worship leader. We have to hire somebody that can help me to take some of this stuff off my plate. I'm overworked and I'm telling you I'm burning out. And they're like, okay, well, we're going to hire somebody. And we interviewed a bunch of people, and a friend of mine actually interviewed for this role, and I loved her. She was amazing. And I thought she was going to take the role. I'm like, yeah, I want you on this. And she's just like, no, I don't want to be here. She had a gut feeling about the place, and she was right. Anyway, that's another story. Anyway, we found a worship leader, and then, so I was so pumped. Finally, I have some help. Maybe I can stick it out here and last a little bit longer. Maybe I can go the distance because now I have help. Finally, they've heard me and they're giving me help. The pastor from the new campus comes over. And by the way, the pastor of the new campus, like campus pastors have the cushiest jobs on earth, by the way. Okay. They hardly speak at all because satellite churches generally just have like the screen on Sunday and the main pastor just gets piped over through satellite or through a hard drive, right? Then a campus pastor just writes a couple of emails and just like goes home at lunch, basically. I remember going into that church one day, just picking up something I forgot. The whole sanctuary was flooded. Water pouring down onto one of our new projectors onto the floor. This much water on the floor, okay? If I hadn't showed up just by accident or whatever God was putting me there, that whole place, we would have had hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of damage because it was not even close to being, water was just a flood. And if I didn't show up, I brought the baptismal tank out and I rolled it under and I saved the day. And then I had to like they're like, we're going to bring an extractor. And I had to literally sit there with an extractor and help clean this place up. Cause this like campus pastor is nowhere to be found. And so like, anyway, I didn't really have an issue with this guy until this moment. So we finally hired the girl. I'm so pumped because she's going to take some stuff off my plate. Stuff that's just piddly, like writing card charts and doing ProPresenter and all these things. If you don't know what that is, it's just basically busy work that I could be doing other things, right? He comes in, leans on my office door, and he's like, you know about that thing about that she's supposed to be helping you with this and this? I'm like, yeah, I'm so excited. He's like, yeah, she's not going to be doing that. I'm like, what? What do you mean? And then they're like, well, you know, I just don't think. He's like, well, no, that's not what's going on at all. What's happening is this, because I helped write this job description. I know what she's going to be doing. And he's like, well, let's go talk to the lead pastor and the exec pastor, and we'll see what they say. And then I'm like, okay. So we go into the office and they were waiting for me with a whiteboard with his laptop open. I'm like, what is happening right now? I was ambushed like crazy. They planned this because they knew I was going to be pissed. They sat me down and they basically gaslighted me. They're like, no, you heard it wrong. It's definitely, she's not doing any of those things. Sorry. I'm like, well, excuse me? Like, come on, guys. I needed help and we finally got it. And so what's going on here? What's happening? And I was so upset. Like I wasn't visibly like yelling or anything. I was like, come on, guys. Like, I'm like, okay. And then because I'm a good little pastor, I submit to my leadership. I said, okay, fine. We'll just got to do what we got to do. And, you know, there was no anger or anything like that. It was like, yeah, sorry. There was anger in my heart when I left that room, but there was no outward visible anger. But this is what the things that were shifting. They were like, all of a sudden, no, she's not going to help me anymore. I still have to do all those things. And I was so upset. Okay, because this guy does nothing, by the way, and I was so upset because nobody does anything except for the 3 main guys: the communications pastor, me, and the tech pastor. We did everything in this place. Everybody got to go home in normal time. We never did, never. I remember doing this paper chain scene at our church, and there's like a million paper chains, and we got 100 volunteers out stapling them, and I was there late stapling paper chains and hanging them and everything else. And I asked people for help, and no one helped me. I just remember that because it was a beautiful scene, but the blood, sweat, and tears that went into that and the anger that went into that, the joy was being sapped out of ministry for me. I wasn't getting any help. Everything was shifting. Something was going on, and it was growing. And the thing is I was becoming an influence. I was becoming the reason that people were coming to church. They did a survey the first year I was there. The main pastor, and they gave the data at the end, and the main reason people were coming, the lead pastor. Like 75% of the reason. Sunday morning experience is the main thing that keeps churches going. Okay, let's not get it twisted. Sunday morning is the main event. Okay, So for my first year, I saw the data. It was like he had the biggest bar. Then worship was like 30%. By my last year, we were almost even. I'm coming because I like the music. And so my takeaway, my conjecture, because they've never told me this at all, obviously they would never, is that I was becoming too big of an influence and too big of a reason people were coming. And they were already not liking my attitude. They were already not liking that I was asking hard questions and holding people accountable and trying to get to the bottom of things. And so like, look, he's developing too big of an influence here, and we got to figure out a way to get rid of him. That's what I think anyway. So all that was going on, and there's just things that kept shifting. I just kept felting. And then my coach shifted to lead pastor from the executive pastor. So executive pastor was my coach. Then all of a sudden it was the lead pastor. And I had two, every year we have these, where you fill out your own grade of all these questions, and then he fills out the grade, and you come together and you do this, like, whatever you call that. I don't know what it's called. And you compare notes and say, this is how you're doing. Oh, it's a performance review. That's what we do. And he would say, what's your grade for this question? I'm like, I gave myself a 7 for this. He's like, I gave you a 9 for that. I'm like, I would be a little more hard on myself for certain things. And he'd be like, no, you're better than you think. So I had 2 great performance reviews for the first 2 years. And then the last one, I'll tell you all about that in a minute. So things were getting a little bit harder, a lot harder. And then working tons of hours over Christmas and then Easter. And I was just dreading ministry now. At this point, I was like, I got to figure this out. Like, I can't continue at this capacity because a burnt out pastor is literally a useless pastor. If you don't have joy in ministry, get out of ministry. You need to have joy. If you're losing your joy as a minister or someone in that position and it's just you're doing it for a paycheck, stop, because you're ineffective and people see it. And so that's kind of where I was at that point. And I got to a point where there was never any fighting. There was never any loud banging, yelling, screaming. It was just more like me sucking it up because I had to be submissive to my pastor, and then just the burnout starting to really, really affect me. Another thing that really struck me is that of all the friends I made at this church, okay, people really wanted to be around you. You had tons of people inviting you for dinner. Come on, we'd love to hang out with you, take you out for lunch. We'd like to do all this stuff with you. And my wife has close friends, and she's working for someone at the church and like doing lots of great things, and she's happy. Everybody's happy. My kids are going to church every Sunday. They're loving it. Everybody has friends. My sons are going to youth group, and they're meeting their friends, and everybody's having a great old time, right? And as soon as we didn't go back to that church anymore, okay, as soon as that happened, nobody called us anymore. A couple people stuck with us, a couple. And I love those people for that. But it's just like, it's like we didn't exist. And everybody who's an ex-pastor or an ex-minister knows exactly what I'm talking about. And that was one of the hardest parts of this whole situation. So this is what happened. So I went up to them and I said, look, guys, I need some help. They didn't give me the help. And then when they finally got the help, they said, she's not going to do what I need her to do. So I was like, okay. So I was at a loss. I'm like, I got to figure something. I was praying, like, God, what do I got to do here? What do I got to do to get a break? And like a miracle, no joke, this is the craziest miracle of all time. So we finalized the adoption with the older boys like December 27th, right after Christmas the year before. And then my worker said, hey, who's taking parental leave? I'm like, what? What's that? In Canada, you guys love this. It's amazing. And I'm so sad you don't have this. Canada, if you pop out a baby, okay, even if you don't pop out the baby, if I did most of the hard work though. I busted a nut and then I sired 2 children. But if you pop out a baby, you get 12 months of paid maternity leave, okay? The government will pay you, like, I think up to 50% of your salary or something like that. You get money to just pop out a kid. And you don't have to pay for it. We go to the hospital, you have a baby, you walk out. There's no bills. We got it good here. And you can take 12 months of maternity that's federally protected. And the dad can take paternity leave, right? If the mom wants to go back to work, the dad can take care of the kid. If you have twins, you get like back-to-back 12 months. And you can now take up to 18 months. So an extra 6 months that's not paid. So you can take up to 18 months because Canada understands the value of having parents around newborns. I don't know how you people do in the US without maternity and paternity leave. That's mind-blowing to me that you don't have that. And so most government positions in Canada and other high-level positions will top you up. So you literally get your full pay for the 12 months while you have a kid at home taking care of them. Isn't that amazing? Anyway, adoption is very similar. If you finalize an adoption, it's like you birthed a child without the poop and all the stuff at the bottom and all the grossness, because I looked down. It was gross. So without all that, you get to take leave. And I'm like, this is a miracle sent from Jesus above. Thank you, Lord. I get to take leave. Federally protected leave. Holy shnikes. My wife and I were like, yeah, pitting pinatas, we're having parties, baking cakes. We're like, I get my leave, I'm going to take a break, and I get to do it legally. This church doesn't allow you to take any leave, like without, whatever, normally leave for 7 years. Then you only get like a month. So 7 years, then you can take a month off or 2 months, I think it is, to chill. and reset. But ministry at this level that we were doing it as insane. No one else worked as hard as the three main dudes who did the Sunday morning stuff. Not at all. 50, 60, 70 hours a week, and then Christmas, 100 hours a week. Like every week. Summer, it did die down a hair. Like youth pastors don't do much in the summer. It's great. But it did die down a hair because we would shut down one auditorium for the summer. We were like, that's a party for us. So you worked maybe 40 hours a week, 45 if you're lucky, right? So I found out I get this leave, and I'm so freaking excited. And I'm like, I cannot believe this. I'm so pumped. So I tell them, I say, guys, I wrote them a letter, put it in writing. Hey, just so you're aware, I wasn't aware that I could get leave, but now I understand that I get federal protected leave. I'm going to take my leave as of this day. And boy, did that not go well. I thought I was going to be like, congratulations on adopting this selfless deed that you've done for the world. Great, Dad. They were like, hold up a second. They brought me into a meeting, and you could see there was panic in their eyes. Okay, they're like, what's going on? What's going on? I'm like, I'm taking leave, guys. And I didn't say it like, I'm taking leave because you guys didn't give me any help and I need to get out of here. I'm like, look, I need to spend more time with my family. I need to build those relationships back up. I need to like take this time and like rejuvenate, recharge my batteries. And they're like, whoa, let's not make any rash decisions right now. Let's take a think about this, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, what do you mean let's? In my brain, I'm like, shut your pie hole, bro. I'm taking this time. But I was like, oh, okay, yeah, let's, we'll circle back and discuss. No, it's happening. I'm like, anyway, so I blew fluff up their butt for a little bit. And I'm like, okay, we'll come back and talk about it. But I'm like, 2 days ago by, I'm like, guys, typey, I'm taking this leave. Bye. It's like, there's no way I'm sticking around because I get this leave and I'm protected and I'll come back refreshed. And I really would. I would have come back refreshed. I would have been like brand new. I would have felt great. Because stepping away from something that you love can be hard, but refreshing yourself and recharging your batteries and becoming a better dad and building those relationships back to where they need to be is very important. Pastors, way too often, will put ministry first over everything else, and everything else is secondary to it. And that sucks. And churches expect it. I remember one point, the executive pastor, we were talking about burnout in a meeting or a conversation or something at a retreat, talking about burnout in pastors because it was becoming a big issue. And he was unapologetically like, it's built into the cost. That's just what it is. We're prepared. We are okay with it, basically saying that is built into the cost. When you're done, it's going to be someone else. When that person's done, when that youth pastor's done, we'll bring someone else. When that person's done, someone else. These guys are sitting on cushy, very, very six-figure salary positions that they don't do a ton of work at all, except for a couple phone calls and some emails. They don't do any of the hard work at all. And so it's easy for them to just come in for a few hours and leave. But for us doing literally labor at these churches and working overtime and doing video and painting walls, putting up scaffolding and everything else, we were going crazy. But when he said that, I never forgot it. It's built into the cost. It's just the way it is. Did I want to headbutt him? No. Yes. So I didn't, but that really resonated with me when he said that. And it was early on in my job, so I wasn't already pissed at everything, right? So, but it stuck with me. Obviously, it resonated. So I told them, guys, I'm taking leave. My wife's on board. We're all pumped. Everybody's happy. We got family plans. We're going to party. It's going to be great. And as soon as I decided that, obviously I put it in writing, there's nothing they could do about it. That's federally protected. I get it. Nobody can say no to me because that's illegal to say no. Because basically women generally only take the leave, and it's like kind of low key. Do you really need to do this? You're a dad. Why would you need to take leave? But being a parent is a parent no matter what. Anyway, it was legal. I was allowed to get it. So, but then everything changed. Everybody stopped talking to me. Pastors stopped talking to me. People started just not coming to ask me for anything anymore. Up to that point where I was going to leave was about a month. I gave them about a month to figure out what to do. And I even offered to stay on as a volunteer worship leader. And they're like, nope, if you're gone, you're gone. They were looking for this. And I'll explain why later. They wouldn't let me lead worship as a volunteer. And I said I would, just to help. Nope, you're not doing that. But they did let me join the parking team. So I was okay, if you don't know anything about church jokes, the parking team's like the lowest relegated place to be for anybody. And that's not saying it's just guys who are selfless. And the parking team is always full of guys who are selfless. But they're just guys that don't, if someone wants to come in and be like, I want to lead this ministry, and the pastor knows that this person's a total douchebag or something like that, they're like, it'd be really cool if you started at the parking team. Parking team's literally the place you go, to die in ministry. It's crazy. But I joined the parking team because I really wanted to just show everybody that I'm still volunteering here. I'm still sold out. I'm still good. And I like parking. And I got to wave at people when they came in and be like, who the hell, the worship pastor's parking people? And it's like, I just wanted to be there. And I liked it. That's what I chose to volunteer as. I could have done other things, but I chose the parking team. And they were cool with that. But I wasn't on stage anymore. That's a big one to remember, okay? And so I was on my leave for a little bit, and then I noticed that going to church on Sunday, no lead pastor, executive pastor, or anybody was talking to me anymore. They would walk right by me, like 2 feet from me, and ignore me. I'm like, that's a little, I guess I get why they're a little bit hurt. I get why they're a little bit upset. They had to bring an intern in to take on my job, and then started realizing, this guy does a lot. We're screwed, basically, is what happened. He does way more than we thought. And unfortunately, so many times this has to happen where a pastor has to leave or whatever, and people start realizing, that's what they did. Okay, well, and sometimes it's eye-opening, and sometimes it needs to happen. And so this intern was great. He was a great dude, and I tried to train him as much as I could, and he did what he could, but they put so much pressure on this young guy. I think he ended up leaving too, and it was just crazy. Like it all started falling apart because I was I'm not saying I was the glue, but I was the one that was holding things together because I was submitting. And I was just like, I was strong enough to hold it together and just do what I needed to do, right? So I'm like, I'm just a strong, hard worker, and that's something everybody should be anyway. And so I just go for it. And so they realized how much I was actually doing. And so it definitely, they were pissed is basically what happened. They were like, we're pissed that this guy's just kind of led us here and then dropped it off. Months went by, and then I found out that my leave was truncated because I took it too late. So I thought you could take 12 months at the point where you took it, but it's not. It's 12 months from the point you finalize your adoption. So I had to come back early. And in Canada, that's fine. You just have to give your employer 4 weeks notice, and you're fine. Legally, they have to give your job back. There's so many protections for workers here. It's really, really awesome. And so I said, hey, put it in writing, guys, I'm thinking about coming back early. I'm really ready to get back into it. Let's do this. And then the lead pastor messages me back and says, yeah, that's not happening. We'll try, maybe we can get a job with someone who works at the church or something. And so what he said in that email was illegal. It was illegal for him to say that. And I was like, oh, okay, well, because I remember at the last meeting when I was leaving, and they said, okay, well, when you want to come back early, just let us know and we'll get you back in here. I remember the pastor specifically saying, when I took leave, I wanted to come back after 2 weeks, and 2 weeks was like, I had to come back, and you're going to do the same thing. And he was so confident that I was going to come back early, and kind of right, but not for the right reasons. And he was so confident. He says, when you're ready to come back, come on back. I'm like, okay, cool. So I was confident that everything was kind of chill. I know they were a little bit pissed, but that, we'll get over it. This is a church full of grace. These are pastors who practice and study grace for a living and have grace for people. It's not like I did something wrong, first of all. I was doing something for my family. So I was like, they'll get over it. So I wrote that message. Then he wrote back and said, no, you're not coming back. And then I wrote the executive. I'm like, we need to talk about what we're doing here because I need to figure it out. And he's like, okay, yeah, we're set up a meeting for next week. And I said, okay, cool. So the week goes by, and then I'm getting ready to go in. The day before the meeting, something hits me, and it's my gut, right? No, it wasn't taco night, but it hit me. And I said to my wife in bed, right before I was going, I'm going to get fired tomorrow. And she's like, you're just worried because blah, 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 you think they're mad. And I'm like, no, I'm getting fired tomorrow. I'm getting fired tomorrow. I feel it in my gut. I know something's going on. I'm getting fired. And she's just like, no, not happening. Because here's why. Because in Canada, if you take parental leave and you are fired because you took parental leave, there is a human rights violation that happens. And you can literally sue the pants off people, take them to human rights court. It is a big deal here. If you violate someone's human rights, it's crazy. You go to this tribunal and it's like, it's not even real judges. It's like this panel of people that are waiting to like get these hear these cases and like shut it down. Human rights are a massive issue here. And so if they were going to fire me, they would have violated my human rights because they would have fired me for taking parental leave. I'm nervous. Like all of a sudden I can't sleep. I didn't get any sleep. I was nervous. My wife's like, you're fine. She's just like snoring. You're okay. I'm like, okay, but I'm telling you. So I drive the caravan in the next day, pull in the parking lot, and I'm just feeling it. I'm feeling it. You know what I'm talking about, people. You know in your heart, in your gut, in your butt that something's going to happen. So I walk up, I walk into the office. I just, hey, everybody's like, hi. And I just feel this vibe, like the chilliest vibe. Okay. And most people like me. I'm just trying to say, like, I'm a friendly dude and I get along with a lot of people. And I'm like, oh man, something's going on. And so what I did, I took my phone, I opened voice memos, and I recorded the whole conversation. And in Canada, beautiful Ontario, one-party consent is legal. And I recorded everything that went on that meeting. More tomorrow. It's going to get crazy. I'm going to tell you what happened in that meeting, and we're going to break it down. And the beautiful thing is I have proof of what went down, because so many pastors, it's all about hearsay. It's all about he said, she said, or he said, and you're going to believe lead pastors and all this stuff. I literally have full recorded proof of full-fledged lies from the lead pastor and the executive pastor. Tune in tomorrow. Like and subscribe, hit the little bell, or don't. It's about to get cray.